Mutsepe, who's a trustee of CRF, as well as Phuthi Mahanyele-Dabengwa, who's also a trustee of CRF. We are grateful of your leadership and support. Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation is an independent public benefit organization, and our aim is to contribute to the developmental needs in primary, secondary, and tertiary education and small business development. So we view the work that we do as from classroom to boardroom in an arc of life, so that when we touch and contribute to education, we are able to follow through with our developmental mandate up until we get you into entrepreneurship and supporting for the growth of businesses and creation of jobs. We believe that this is the most direct means to improving quality of life of South Africans, and that it enables achieving our purpose of developing an inclusive and empowered society. Our foundation, we implement our programs through our partner entities, which is Adopt a School Foundation, KST, Black Umbrellas, and CRET. CRET is our youth development program, and it provides bursaries and holistic wraparound support for tertiary studies through partnership with corporate sponsors and individuals. CRET is also partnering with other non-profit organizations such as Youth Managers Foundation, which Mabutho's organization, who's facilitating our session today. And we implement developmental programs that are targeting the youth because we acknowledge that youth development comes in many facets. It's not only supporting tertiary education, it also includes supporting non-cognitive skills development, such as leadership, and other emotional and skills-based development. Now, in the context of the global pandemic, which we are experiencing now, and the environment that we are in, the measures that have taken to contain the global pandemic, we know that have mostly affected young people because young people are the most vulnerable. Their studies have been disrupted. We know that education and schooling has been disrupted as well. Many are unable to study because of lack of access to online resources. Job prospects, given the economic outcomes that we're looking at post the coronavirus pandemic, may even look more dire. Their social lives and relationships have been affected. And this is during the most critical and formative years. I like to say that this is the generation that will be telling people that there has been a year where we couldn't go and interact and go to school and go to lecture classes. And this was a year that pivoted South Africa into a new global norm where we are able to connect more with the world, and to bring more skills in a faster pace. Young people, however, need our support. We need to bet on them, and we need to believe that supporting and contributing to the development of the youth is one of the key aspects that will get us to prosper in the future. The youth of our society, literally, they represent, from all walks of society, our capacity to anticipate and to withstand and transform what the future challenges we encounter. And we are experiencing these challenges. However, they come with great tons of opportunities, which I'm sure some of our panelists will be addressing. How do we address the need for the continued youth development support in these circumstances? And these are some of the areas that we would have to engage on during this platform. The key question for this Thought Lab webinar is that how do we address the need for continued youth development support in these circumstances? We sought to address it, and not in isolation, but as partners, as young people, youth development practitioners, and the private sector. And we believe that together, it's our shared responsibility to make sure that we arrive together in our shared future. And with those few words, Mabutho, I would like to welcome everyone and thank you for participating in this webinar. And may we have fruitful discussions that will enlighten our path. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mmabatho, for a warm welcome. We feel warm now in this cold Thursday morning. And thank you for the wonderful work that you are leading under the Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation banner, to which I can personally attest. I mean, some pessimists have described the situation broadly facing our young people as a cocktail of disaster. Some have suggested that it is a ticking time bomb, but some optimists suggest it remains a democratic dividend. But for Africa to fully earn and enjoy this dividend, it all depends on the bold actions and investments that we make in transforming and realizing the potential of our youth for greater good of society. Coronavirus has taken us many steps backwards, as you have rightfully indicated, Mmabatho, and it continues to do so. And the social and economic disruptions have placed pressure on the resources of the private sector, many of which supported youth development initiatives. But as the saying goes, in the midst of a crisis lies the abundance of opportunities. So therefore, this webinar aims to provide the private sector and youth development organizations to jointly share, engage on these challenges, and mostly on solutions to youth development. One of the positive spin-offs from COVID-19 is that it allows us an opportunity to strengthen genuine partnerships between government, corporate sector, civil society, the NPOs and NGOs, built on mutual trust, impact-driven solutions to address our current and future challenges facing our youth. Without any further ado, allow me to introduce to you our panelists who will engage on this topic, reflecting on the challenges that we are currently facing, and most importantly, coming up with solutions that we will engage on going forward and ensure that we implement. Mr. Cyril Madiba, who is the chair of the CRET Alumni Advisory Board and senior finance specialist at APSA, is one of our panelists. Allow me to welcome Ms. Dineo Nono, who's a quality improvement facilitator at the Cyril Ramaphosa Education Trust, alumnus. Allow me also to introduce to you Ms. Chantel Wosthuizen, who's the executive director at the Cyril Ramaphosa Education Trust. Allow me to introduce Ms. Phuthi Mahanyele-Dabengwa, who's a renowned and seasoned businesswoman and currently the Chief Executive Officer of NASPAS South Africa and Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation trustee as well. Mr. Naka Hlagala, who's a project coordinator at Phembani Group, is also joining us as one of our panelists. Also, lastly and not least, Mr. Christian Pepe Nyane, who's the Executive Corporate Affairs and Human Capital Executive at Pilanesberg Platinum Mine. Welcome to our panelists. Now, to kick off the discussion, I would truly like to give each of our panelists some time, about 2 minutes each, just to give us their introductory comments and input on the basis of the topic that we are engaging on today, committing to our youth and committing to our future. In a nutshell, what does it mean to you? Let me start with Cyril Madiba.
Thank you, Mmabatho. Morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here at this Thoughts Lab webinar. My name is Cyril, as I've been introduced. I was supported by CRET in my studies towards becoming a chartered accountant. And I also chair the CRET Alumni Advisory Board, with providing proposals to CRET on strategic and operational matters. Also means that earlier this year I founded an organization called the Growth Switch, which basically assists young people with growth insights in their academic career and personal development journey. I believe that the youth are the future of the country, and investment in the youth can only be beneficial and positive for society, as can be seen with the role that the youth has played during this COVID-19 pandemic, even the front lines, and also involvement in other initiatives to alleviate the pressures of the pandemic. I also just want to say that there are some challenges that face the youth, and each one of us, stations like these, have solutions. Yeah, I'm looking forward to some fruitful discussion to play, regardless of how every role counts. Back to you, Mmabatho. Back to you, Mmabatho.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that background. Dineo, your thoughts?
Firstly, hi everyone. My name is Dineo, and just like Cyril, who has spoken, I was also supported by CRET throughout my tertiary education. Firstly, I'm very excited, very honored to be here today. And just as Cyril has said, I feel like obviously the youth is the future of the country, and if we do support the youth, we support the country. And I feel like these are the most important conversations that should be happening, because from here we get amazing ideas and ways that we can support the youth practically. And this is such a great perspective as a young person, to know that whatever I take from here, I can go on to spread into my community, whether it's just starting with my community of friends or then going on to other young people I know. So I'm very excited to be here, and I cannot wait to discuss and have as much as ideas discussed as possible.
Thank you very much, Dineo, and we certainly look forward to your profound contributions later on. Chantel, what are your thoughts from your end? I mean, you've dealt with Cyril and Dineo under the CRET program. What does this opportunity present in your view?
Dr. Motsepe again. I believe she has joined us in the room. But I represent the Cyril Ramaphosa Education Trust, which is a holistic
I think we've lost Chantel there.
I think yes.
Ntembu, I don't know if anyone else can.
Yes, I think while Chantel sorts out the technical issues that she has experienced, Ms. Phuthi Mahanyele.
Hi, Mmabatho, thank you very much. So Statistics South Africa shows us that Black youth are less skilled than their parents, and every other race and age group. It's also youth who make up the bulk of South Africa's unemployed. The majority of youth in South Africa face significant challenges, as we all know, starting with social ills at an early stage in their lives, limited access to quality education, crime, unemployment, etc. So as a company at Naspers, we believe that young people are innovative and dynamic, and we're putting our money to that. As a company, we, in terms of our businesses, we impact 1.5 billion people per month in 91 markets in Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And so when the President Ramaphosa, 2 years ago, called on companies to respond to being able to invest in South Africa, we did that by committing to 1.6 billion rand, and which we use to invest into early stage businesses here in South Africa. The businesses that we invest into are businesses that are run by young South Africans. We are essentially not just backing businesses, we're backing the founders of the businesses. And you'll know of a business called Sweep South. Sweep South is a company which employs over 15,000 people, and we invested into that. It's run by a young Black woman and her husband, and we also invested into a company called Aerobotics, another internet business. All the businesses we invest into are internet businesses, but these are businesses that are founded by young South Africans. And we certainly believe that this is something that is important. And I think beyond just looking at businesses that we can invest into, we've also looked at early stage. When you look at young people, and I know that Dr. Motsepe has spent a lot of time and a lot of resources looking at the impact of young people at their earliest stage. We believe that this is something that's important for one to look into. And so what we've done is we've looked at youth, not necessarily looking at ECD, but that is an area that we want to go into. But we've looked at youth, and in terms of youth, we've come up with a program last year. It's a year-old program. And through that program, over this year, we've been able to impact 2,000 young people. We tested it in Cape Town, and now we're rolling it out. We opened up a pilot in Alexandra, and we're going to be opening them up across the country. So this is how we are responding to the significant ills and societal difficulties that young people are facing today. They're facing much bigger challenges than what we faced. And so it is up to us to see what we can do in the parameters that we work in to try and create a different future for the youth that we have today.
Thank you very much, Sis Phuthi, for the wonderful work that you're doing under the NSPAS banner. Certainly, I fully agree with you. The potential is there, and the willingness for support and for growth and for greatness is there amongst the young people. And it takes the initiatives of this nature for us to be able to turn around the tide and actually talk positively from what we can pick up from the crisis that we are currently facing. And thanks for sharing with us that background. Naka, Hlagala, if you could give us some context as well in terms of your thinking around the topic that we are discussing today.
Thank you, Mr. Mthembu. Before COVID-19 happened, it found us as a country, both public and private sector, and to some extent individuals, wrestling with the treble challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. And as we speak now, things are worse, and more so for the youth. And as such, I am excited to be part of this webinar, especially when I realized that on the panel, there are youth and not so youth. For me, that is the first step towards building a partnership of wisdom, energy, experience, and enthusiasm towards coming with innovative solutions to address the challenges of the new world. Having said that, let me also, my second point, pick on the talking points, investing in young people today for the role that they may play in society in the future. And Mmabatho say, I slightly differ with that statement, because in my view, when we invest in youth today, especially the tools that we are giving them, is to become functional human beings today, building the country of our dreams. Let me stop there. If time permits, also I heard Phuthi has touched the statistics, the stats in terms of youth unemployment, which was published recently, I think last week of June, and it is not really impressing. So from the private sector point of view as well, we are struggling for oxygen, and it may happen, as you mentioned in your introduction, that we fail or forget to also focus on the CSI programs, especially for youth development, which we were doing in the past. So this webinar, I'm excited, is going to refocus our energies, all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naka. Thank you very much. You've hit the nail on the head there. I fully agree with you. The youth, every investment that is done to young people should be, for all intents and purposes, be about today. Because the challenges that we are facing are not the future challenges, but these are the challenges of today. Christian Papenyane, are you with us? You okay?
Thank you, Mmabatho, and
okay.
It's a pleasure to be in this webinar. I am from a mining entity, and our contribution in this webinar is quite simple. We have read and we have seen the stats in terms of unemployment, which is sitting or hovering around 34%. And of that unemployment, 10% affects the youth. Why are the youth not employed? Because of lack of skills. And as corporate, what we have a responsibility towards is to ensure that we invest in practical skills and training programs that will make the youth to be employable, which is critical for the future. And I think it is also important to understand that we need to play a very involved role whereby we address the immediate needs of our youth in giving them and empowering them for them to be able to obtain such skills so that they can be employable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Christian. I couldn't agree with you more on that point. It's critical that the skills development forms the basis of the core support that we provide, so that when they enter the corporate market, they are well trained and well empowered to be able to positively contribute in the development of this country. Chantel, are you back online?
I am indeed. I do apologize. It is Murphy's Law, I guess. So thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. I have missed what some of the others have said, but as I was saying, that I represent the Cyril Ramaphosa Education Trust, which is a holistic youth development program. It was formalized in 1999, and it really supports youth in achieving their potential futures, as I'd like to believe is evidenced by some of those alumni and students we have here today. I think that having worked in this space for a number of years, the greatest challenge facing our youth is unemployment. And youth unemployment is, as you said, Mmabatho, it is a ticking time bomb possibly. But as we've entered the time now with coronavirus, it's become increasingly evident that our students, or that the youth in this country, are also facing immense challenges, and a lot of those are around psychosocial challenges. And I'm hoping that we are able to discuss today how we can support youth as a number of entities, whether it be government, NGOs, civil society, and the corporate sector, but how we can address the problems that the youth and our future for this country and the economy of this country can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chantel. And let me remind all our guests that we want everyone to lean in this conversation. Again, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the discussion where we will engage on your comments as well as the questions that you may have on the specific points raised by our panelists. And I urge you to keep it short, keep it sharp, and keep it straight to the point so that the conversation can flow and we can get to the solutions that we are all looking forward for as part of this conversation. Dineo, if I may put you there on the spot, I understand that you obviously are part of the CRET alumni, and you also have been working as an emergency worker in the health sector, and you have been in the forefront of COVID-19. So you have not only been working from home like some of us, but you have actually been out there in the cold and facing the enemy as a young person. What has your experience been as a young person as part of the frontline forces that are engaging COVID-19 directly so?
Thank you, Mthembu. So it's been a shock to the system. I must say it's been quite a shock to the system, because for so long you work in the healthcare sector and things are quite normal. So never did I think something like this would happen, where all systems would be interrupted, where focus would have to change from what you're working on into now trying to deal with the pandemic that we have. So it's been a very humbling experience. It's been an experience where I have had to learn to think on my feet so much more. It's been an experience that built so much more humanity. And these are things that I do believe that I got as a foundation because I was in CRET. So as Chantal had said, and from experience, CRET did not just provide tertiary provision and made sure you have your fees paid or your books, but because it was holistic in the sense that also it made you meet other people. It created an element of humanity. Ubuntu was very much preached, and you knew how to work with other people and how to exist outside of yourself and exist in a community and understand the importance of the community. So things that I learned like that from being in CRET as a student has helped me to continue to do my job, not just healthcare professional, but also as a human being, because you are dealing with human beings, you're dealing with patients, you're dealing with actual lives, you're dealing with, you know, clinicians, nurses, and doctors who are people themselves. So it's been quite a humbling experience. It's been interesting to see how different people react to what we've been faced with, but it's definitely been such a great learning opportunity amongst, you know, the scares and having to wear masks for like 8 hours on end. But it's definitely been a humbling experience.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And I think you've raised a very critical point there about the fact that throwing money into the problem does not necessarily solve the problem. So you have mentioned the other holistic support that was provided by CRET that has enabled you to be able to be in the front line and actually not lose focus, but then continue to be the strength that is keeping at least some of us together to ensure that at least at the end of this all, there will be light at the end of the channel. And those involve leadership, like you have mentioned, Ubuntu, and other values that are important in the value system. Cyril, obviously you are also part of the CRET alumnus. Why do you see this relationship between investing in young people today and the role that young people should play in the future, especially keeping in mind that there seems to be increasing uncertainty around what the future holds?
Yeah, thanks Mmabatho.
Cyril?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello,
yes,
can
we can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, sorry, so something happened there. Yeah, so I was saying, so like Dineo said, there was a lot of holistic support that came through CRET, and so as the youth, what's been instilled into us is to pay it forward and to see how we can help in society. And particularly the investment in the youth can take multiple facets, really. It can be financial, but like you said just now, if you throw money into into the problem, it doesn't really fix it. So there's also other aspects like knowledge sharing, time in terms of mentoring, and transferring of soft skills that needs to also be part of the mix. And it's essentially all of that should assist us in making some inroads into the unemployment issue. Because if you look at it, right, unemployment issue, you have those who have some tertiary qualifications, but they can't get jobs, and you have those who don't have tertiary qualifications. So there's a big skills mismatch, and the whole point is to make our youth employment ready through the mix of not only technical skills transferring, but also soft skills. So I do see that the link to the future is uncertain, like you're saying. I mean, we were speaking about fourth industrial revolution being the buzzword, and I feel like with COVID-19, a large portion of the fourth industrial revolution has just come through the door and announced itself. And part of that skills transfer should be ensuring that our youth is ready for that future.
Hi, Cyril. Hi, Cyril.
Change.
Hi, Cyril. Hello, Cyril.
Living in now, and part of what the youth should have is the ability to manage and be able to cope with such change. At times it comes at you very rapidly, as we've experienced in the past. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can
Hello?
just move around. Because
I'm not sure where I got cut off. Sorry, I seem to be experiencing.
It's intermittent. If you could just move around.
Okay. All right.
While you move around.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, try again. Let's go ahead.
Sorry, are you back to me, Mmabatho?
Yes, let's try again.
Okay, okay. I'm not sure where I got cut off,
Cyril?
so I'll just keep it short this time.
Yeah. Cyril?
So basically, like you mentioned, hello?
Yes, if you could move around.
Okay, I think maybe move on to the next person while I sort out my issues.
I'll
Sorry,
definitely
I don't know
do
what's
that.
going on.
I'll definitely do that. Sis Phuthi? Sis Phuthi?
Hi, Mmabatho.
Yes, if I may move to you. In your introduction, you shared with us obviously the alarming picture of the statistics around the youth in South Africa, which obviously is going to escalate even in a worse situation as a result of COVID-19. I mean, that is not going to help us a lot. It's going to take us a few steps backwards. And you've mentioned some wonderful programs, obviously, that are offered by NESPA South Africa, which is the crux of this conversation, because we want to ensure there's alignment between what corporate South Africa is doing and what corporate South Africa expects now with this change from youth organizations or youth development practitioners going forward. Now, there is a view that corporate South Africa, when it comes to transformation, be it in their investments from a CSI's perspective, it normally just becomes a tick the box exercise. And I would like you to respond to that as somebody who has been in corporate South Africa for a while. How would you respond to a young person that has that perspective? Now, with that question in mind, also, I would want you to respond to what questions do young people or to corporate sector have of young people development programs in terms of their reorientation and delivery of services. So how do young people ensure that they are in a position to fit into the thinking of corporate South Africa so that we are all aligned in terms of our objectives from a developmental perspective?
Sure. Okay, Mmabatho, that's a huge question. I don't think I'll be able to address all the points. But I think let me start with just a background on the fact that, you know, as we currently see that, you know, we're in this world that we are in, where we're facing unprecedented challenges with COVID-19 pandemic. And what we've seen is young people continuing to demonstrate their leadership. Notwithstanding the fact that, according to the UN, young people are the most affected by COVID, particularly given the socio-economic impacts that it's had. Nonetheless, youth have been the most, you know, active in terms of global responses. Not only are they in the front lines as workers, they are also advancing health and safety in their roles as researchers, activists, innovators, communicators. And as such, you know, it shows that youth voices are part of the solution for a healthier, safer, and gender equal world. And that is another issue that we face here in South Africa. As NASPERS, what we have seen is how we can respond to this. And one of the things that I mentioned is the fact that we have an entity called Labs, where we are supporting young people through the internet. And what we do is we are offering them access to skills, and we're going through a process to get those skills accredited so that young people have access to accredited skills that they can use for employment. But, you know, over and above that, it is also important to be able to support them as entrepreneurs, as I mentioned also earlier. And so, you know, supporting them in business. But I think the most critical area is in looking at ECD. And, you know, and this is something that I know Dr. Motsepe can speak very well of, given her years of experience in this area. But, you know, I think that this is the most critical, because one of the things that we see happening is the fact that as young people, young parents have to leave homes, and they leave the children in all sorts of environments. Some children have the opportunity to go to creches, but some children end up in, you know, very difficult, very challenging environments. And so the ability of corporates to also be able to support young people, but young children, in terms of their early stage development is something that is critical, because those first years of the child's life are the most important time to be able to develop them into human beings that can function very well. And what we tend to do, as many of us as corporates, we tend to go for the youth who are already empowered in terms of looking for youth who are doing well in high school so that we can fund them in university, when we ought to be going to the earliest stage when they are most vulnerable to be able to support them. So those are different ways in which I think there are many ways in which corporates can help. But, you know, post-COVID-19 pandemic, unfortunately, many corporates, you know, will be faced with difficulties. I think what you'll have seen from results from many South African companies, you know, is the fact that many of them have been significantly affected by COVID. Obviously, for an internet business like ourselves, it's been the opposite. And that is why we want to do more. And we want to do more in South Africa as a country where we have started our business.
I couldn't agree with you more, Phuthi. The focus surely should not be only on those who are already almost guaranteed that they would make it to university because of probably their academic accolades and so forth. It is the majority of those that are neglected, be it in the most remote areas of this country, where we should be unearthing the talent. I think obviously the structure of the economy, where you've got a large concentration of companies being in the urban areas and the cities, make it difficult for obviously corporate to advance to those areas. But I think it is then an opportunity for youth development practitioners who may obviously have that capacity and that bandwidth to be able to support those areas in obviously partnership with corporate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as I mentioned, you know, Dr. Motsepe is the one that can really speak to this, you know, given her experience.
Indeed. We cannot wait for the closing remarks. Dr. Motsepe, I hope you are taking notes. Chantel, look, you obviously are the head of CRET. You deal with young people on an ongoing basis. And the great thing is you deal with young people from all walks of life. And you have the insight into the, you know, the myriad of needs of young people. So what are the current needs of young people and youth development organizations, in your thoughts?
Mmabatho, that is a very big question also, but I think that I'd like to agree with what Phuthi was saying now, that very often we are supporting people who already have access to a lot of support. And it's realizing the needs that are out there and what people need. So, you know, we talk of alternative skills development. And that gets back to what Phuthi was saying, that we, instead of identifying those who are already achieving at school and then giving them tertiary education opportunities, what about those that have been left behind? What about those who are never going to go to university? Those who need to be developed in other ways, and that's where I call it alternative skills development routes. We need to be focusing on entrepreneurship for students also, or for the youth. But certainly from CRET's side, you know, we found that our holistic model has been successful to a large degree. And what does holistic support mean? We're providing psychosocial support to students. It means mentorship and coaching, work readiness training. Last year, we implemented a pilot program whereby we were supporting students, senior students, to get their driver's licenses, so driver training. And that's besides the financial support. I think it was Daneo and Cyril who mentioned that we provide a community. Ubuntu is so important, but being able to see how our students give back also. A very strong alumni network, but how they give back going forward. Doing tutoring and mentoring of other students. I would just like to say too that I believe that a lot of people think that support is only about financial support. And it is critical to move away from thinking that way. Obviously, we need financial support for our programs, but there's so much that other sectors can be doing in order to enable and to empower our youth today. And that can be a simple thing like job shadowing for one day, you know, allowing somebody into your office to follow you.
I fully agree. I fully agree with you, Chantel. And I think I'm also in the youth development space. And I think what you're raising is quite critical. I think in the beginning, you don't see it, but as you grow in the space, you therefore see that it's not just about money, but it's about how do you create synergies on other non-financial aspects that are quite of critical importance for young people than merely the money. Naka, if I may just go to you, I mean, as Sis Phuthi said earlier, I mean, we've seen a surge in retrenchments. You know, many businesses are closing down because of COVID at a very fast pace. Obviously, as a result, there will be cost-cutting measures that corporate will be implementing, and they will have to juggle between the socio-economic needs, which they obviously would be channeling through their CSI initiatives, and other business needs, which they have to meet to ensure that they keep the doors open. But obviously, in the kitty, there would be limited resources, and they would have to reprioritize, etc. So this economic situation, how is it affecting the corporate sector? And how is it impacting on the CSI budget and programs of companies? In your view, do we have a funding crisis? And how would the youth development practitioners respond to that?
Thank you, Mmabatho. Perhaps your last question, how do corporates respond to this challenge? In the past, I will refer it in the past, before COVID happened, in my space, we were relying mainly on guidance from civil society organizations or organizations in social activism like your CRF, in terms of a call, a pitch, this is what we are doing, we want to do A, B, C, and D, we think it fits into our business model, can you fund us? And then it was a question of decision making, yes, it fits, we have got something, it can be funded. And you said, at the current moment, because of what COVID has done to organizations themselves are busy cutting costs. And the first cost, even without CSI internally, skills development falls out for employees first, and often who are these employees that are interested in skills development? The young ones. So it therefore says their career move out of that is automatically limited. To say nothing therefore about those who are on the fringes or outside of the system, as we mentioned, that we often neglect. So I do not know the impact as yet. However, from the face value, it is clear. There are retrenchments. If not retrenchments, there are cuts in terms of empowerment. And if not cuts in terms of empowerment, a freeze, as I said, in budgets in terms of skills development. That is the first impact for employees, to say nothing I mentioned about those who are out. But taking advantage of this moment, Mmabatho, allow me please, if you may, to digress a little bit. Sure, thank you. To mention that, well, you know, youth or development in general is a contested space. At the current moment, as we speak about youth, however, that concept is also contested in terms of who is youth, in terms of age parameters. And secondly, what is their voice, or is how dominant is their voice when it comes to youth development programs? Often it is found that it is not that dominant. Whatever that we are doing as corporate organizations is to think from our objectives which are not so much based on future of the young people, but based on the past experience of the companies. And like to tap on Chantel mentioned about driver's licenses. At a time when companies like Uber and are suggesting driverless transport, are we able to be that innovative to support this kind of initiatives so that we are ahead of the curve? But if we are to engage youth in terms of their voice being dominant, especially advising decision making, I think even the problem we think is a problem now of budget cuts and it may be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Naka. It's a very complex, I think, discussion that we are having, because on one hand, we're talking about skills development is quite important. On the other hand, we're saying in this crisis, corporate will be cutting cost, and the first cut will be on skills development. So where do you find the middle ground? Sis Phuthi, if I can give you just a minute, if you could respond to that, because CSI organizations need to find a way to balance this. Corporate says, I don't have money and I'm likely to cut from what I've been giving you. Not everything depends on money, but on the other hand, skills development is such a critical aspect that we need to be able to push our young people forward and ensure that they become economically active and they positively contribute in the development of the country. So in this juncture, where do you find some common ground?
I think, Mmabatho, the common ground comes into investing into the future. And when I say investing into the future, when you look at the companies that are creating the vast portion of employment, it's the small companies. The new emerging companies are the biggest employers in the country. And so when you support an entity like Black Umbrellas, one of the entities within the Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation is Black Umbrellas. And you know, Black Umbrellas, which incubates these startup organizations over a 3-year period, you know, they are now have businesses. There's over 2,000 businesses that have been incubated for different periods of time. And these, I know at one point were paying salaries of over 400 million rand. I don't know where we are now, Mmabatho, with that figure, and generating turnover of over 2 billion rand. And this comes from, you know, starting with an idea of, you know, let's support startups. Now these businesses are creating businesses that have a turnover of over 2 billion rand and are employing so many people. So, you know, I think if we look at supporting startup and early stage businesses, that is how we can create a change, because you're not just giving capital away, you're actually generating more capital. By the capital that you put in, there's more that you generate. So I think that's an area to focus on.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Before I go to Christian, let me remind our guests again and members of the media that are present in this discussion to send us any questions or comments which we can engage on during that aspect of the discussion. Christian, if I may move to you, as a corporate practitioner, what have been the kinds of youth development support that corporate have focused on, and how may this change if you look at it going forward? If you look at it in the context of where we are and going forward, in your view, do you think there would be change in terms of focus, and what would that change be?
Thank you, Mmabatho. I think with your question, I take out two things there. And I would like to echo the sentiments which have been sort of highlighted by the speakers before me. One, the most important thing that we need to recall is that we need to create alternatives industries in our organizations. Luckily for us in the mining industry, we are heavily regulated by what you call the Mining Charter, which was, I think we call it the Mining Charter 3 which is very sort of regulatory as opposed to your CSI initiative. However, it contains the very same elements of your CSI. I'll give an example. As a mining organization, we are obligated to spend 5% of our annual payroll into skills development programs. And thus addressing those and aligning those into your sector, which is the mining industry under the MQA. What are the skills shortages in the mining industry? We identify those and we address those. And similarly, I think each and every other industry should follow the same approach. That is ICT, agriculture, and obviously with that, that will improve skills shortages in the country and enabling jobs for our unemployed youth. So basically that's the takeaway, and that's how we see this change happening. Of course, as a country as well, we need now to adopt new ways of doing things. We need not train our youth for the sake of training or just ticking the box. We need to start training people, aligning them with opportunities that we're gonna see in the next 5 years, 10 years, in as much as we do our business planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. If I may move to Cyril. Cyril, you are a senior finance specialist at ABSA. You are equally supported or alumni of CRET. In your experience as a young professional in corporate South Africa, what are the key differentiating aspects that you believe they actually provided that all-rounded support to you, both from a CRET perspective as well as from corporate South Africa perspective at ABSA?
Sorry, Mmabatho, if you can repeat just the last bit of your question.
Yeah, so what are the key factors that you believe as an alumni of CRET, as well as a senior finance specialist, a young professional who's now at ABSA, what are the key, supporting structures that you believe were given to you to be able to get you to where you are as a professor?
Okay, all right. I think it was in many facets, Mmabatho. Firstly, it was, I think a lot of it had to do with soft skills. So if you look at our youth today, a lot of them do have the qualifications, but they tend to lack in terms of the soft skills, which means they either struggle to get into the work environment, or when they're in the work environment, they struggle to make a meaningful and impactful conversation. So for me, it was overall, there was a mentoring aspect. People gave me time, like Chantal said earlier, you don't have to always give money,
Correct.
And give time, knowledge. So people gave me time, they listened to my struggles, they guided me along the way. It was a longitudinal environment. So for me, it was more the softer skills than the technical skills that really have set me apart. If I look at my peers, so which is why when we focus on the youth, we shouldn't just focus on the technical. We should also make sure that we focus on the soft skills, because those go a long way in shaping a person to be a well-rounded professional in society. And also, in terms of youth skills development, we shouldn't only look at it from an employment perspective. We should probably consider, also imparting a lot of entrepreneurial skills. Because if you interact with our youth, you find that they have a lot of ideas, but they may lack, for example, the necessary knowledge in terms of how to go about implementing those. That's it from my side, Mmabatho.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Cyril. If I may move to Chantal. Chantal, I would just like you to share your thoughts on this, because before COVID, the buzzword and the focus was on the digitized world. It was the fourth industrial revolution. And we landed now in COVID-19, where we've literally had overnight to change and have webinars like we are having today. And you have students in CRET that now have to, have to be supported through other means as opposed to the normal way in which we were used to. And obviously we've seen what the impact has also done that from a school perspective and the universities and so forth. So what has been your experience in that regard? And what do you think we can do better going forward to ensure that at least when these changes come, we are better prepared for them?
Thank you, Mmabatho. Look, we have always supported our students with devices in order for them to be able to undertake the work that they need to do. But the unprecedented times that we are living in has certainly shown the gaps in our society. And a lot of our students who've had to go home, who are not campus-based, have faced the challenges of having devices that are enabled, the challenges of data, access to data. So we can talk endlessly about the fourth industrial revolution and the importance thereof. And I think that we as a country even are so far behind on that level. But by providing our students with, again, I think it's soft skills. I see somebody has commented with regards to reading being so important also. And our chairperson, founder, has spoken so many times about reading and the importance of reading and how that can enable our youth further. But going forward, I think that we're going to have to put a lot more emphasis on upskilling the youth. And that comes, that'll come from, as Phuthi was speaking, from ECD levels. We need to be moving ahead from a young age. We can't expect our youth when they're 16 or so to be exposed suddenly to how to use a laptop. But yes, and it does get to, being prepared for a workplace also, because we need to have technology-based initiatives. I think it's critical. Thank you.
Fully agree with you.
I think Mmabatho, sorry, but if I can just add to what Chantel was saying. I mean, this issue of reading that Sis Eleanor raised is something that is so important. 8 out of every 10 children in South Africa can't read. They can't read in English. They can't read in their own language. They can't read in any language. Now, if you can't read, how can you engage with anything? So, being able to read is something that is so important. And I think we need to be focusing on these foundational areas to be able to support young people and to really be able to make an impact in the economy of South Africa. That's the only way.
Fully agree. I couldn't agree with you more, Sis Phuthi, and thanks for that input. There's a question from Paul Mabusa. We're now going to move to the questions from our guests. And maybe if I could start with you, Sis Phuthi, before you go, and then Naka will pick up from the same question. So Paul is saying, can we relook at the township economy as a catalyst to address joblessness? I'm thinking Paul is raising that particular question because he believes that there's something that we are missing in that sector of the economy. In your view, is there anything we're missing? If yes, how can we relook at that, and how can we use the catalyst to address joblessness?
I think the township economy is something that actually started long before we were even there. I mean, when you look at the stores that the Maponya family started, we've had this township economy in place for a long time. What never happened was that there was never a connection between the township economy and the formal financial institutions. Financial institutions never believed in the township economy. It's only when the word township economy became a buzzword that it became of interest. And the interest was really on looking at Stokvels, because Stokvels are sitting on so much capital, but not necessarily with the genuine interest of backing that founder of a township business. And so that is why until today, you can't speak of a founder in a township who has been supported by one of our big banks. So that is, it's something that needs to change in our environment, where we need to be backing founders of businesses, regardless of where they come from. And we need to be able to really be able to push businesses a lot more fundamentally. And so the township economy is something that is important. It's critical if we are to move forward, because that's where the majority of our populations live. So it is something that is of importance, but we need financial institutions to back them.
To back it up, So that's the crux. The financial institutions need to play ball and ensure that they provide that much needed support. Naka, your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Mmabatho. I think a township economy is an entry point to a critical question of economic inclusion. I did mention earlier on that one of the challenges facing ourselves, or we are faced as a country, is inequality. So basically it's economic exclusion. And so Phuthi is right to say something is missing, which is support from the established economic actors. Not support in terms of monetary, so to speak. At the current moment, there are businesses in the township. The most important part, I think, from my side, is how do we come with a model that is going to be working for everyone in terms of skills transfer, in terms of mentorship. The businesses, most of them, they started as survival, but they grew into something. However, now they are stagnant, because now they must enter into the formal market, or they must compete with the already established institutions, but they do not have the technical expertise in terms of that. So I suggest, as part of that as well, is to come up with a program. Some municipalities do have got those programs, but like I'm saying, those programs are not advertised, or those programs are not sold to the relevant people. It's just programs on the paper. However, when you want to see how are they working, they are not. Thank you.
It could be then the space that the social development practitioners should be entering into as part of the packages that they offer to corporate, because over dependency on donations where corporate don't see value, corporate would not likely invest in that particular CSI organization. But it may then require CSI organizations focusing on youth development to start thinking differently and enter into that space, because traditionally they've always had a better track record of actually dealing with socio-economic issues in our communities. I mean, what would be your thoughts on that?
You are right. Hence, I'm saying moving slightly away from donations, but to engage on the real matter. What is it that is missing? What is it that needs to be plugged so that we activate this township economy? Because at the current moment, it's a concept, and the numbers are saying a lot, they spark interest, but however, is how then do we deliver that? So one cannot escape it to say we also need to speak to the question of infrastructure development. Like for, just to give you an example, at the current moment, we say learners must learn from home. Exams must be written from home. But the infrastructure is missing in the township, to say nothing about the rural. So where do we start? Something like that. Sure.
Fully agreed. Fully agreed. Sis Phuthi, you wanted to make a point?
Yeah, no, I wanted to add on. There's a point that Sis Eleanor made on the chat about arts and culture in our communities as part of the township economy. And she mentions that our artists are an unrecognized asset with a lot to offer, who deserve a lot more investment. Arts projects in the townships attract tourism and economic activity. Local arts events and festivals are important economically, but are also providing work for youth. And she also talks about the importance of libraries as well. So, you know, there are many aspects but I think at the fundamental base of it, we need financial institutions to be backing us, backing the township entities, and for us as corporates to also be backing township businesses as well. And certainly from a NASPA's perspective, we're looking for founders of businesses. And so, you know, whatever, and the first founder that we backed was a Black woman. So, you know, you know, but that's what we all need to be backing, looking for township business people.
Agreed. Good. Yeah, all right. I'm just going to read a comment from Andrew, and if anyone in the panel would like to respond to that, I would highly appreciate it. I really think there's a massive market failure. The supply side, young people don't have skills needed to really support corporate value. Due to COVID, companies have suspended all skills budget and moved elsewhere. On the demand side, companies are spending huge amounts overseas buying services, especially digital services in India, Eastern Europe, and the Philippines. The big four banks spend over 10 billion collectively in skills development offshore. Imagine if that money was brought back into the South African ecosystem. We need to change the market failure and hold our corporate citizens accountable. Anyone who wishes to comment on that?
Well, what I would say, I mean, we are invested, you know, in Brazil, India, China, you know, all these economies. And the reason we're invested in these economies is because of the returns that we're able to receive. You know, and that is why over a 17-year period, we've been able to maintain close to 40% IRR. But, you know, that's not to say that one can't get that in South Africa. We look for opportunities to invest in. When we said that we would commit, when the president said companies in South Africa need to be investing in South Africa, and we committed the 1.6 billion, we're actually willing to invest more because we found other businesses we could invest in. But then we had to deal with the Competitions Commission. You know, South Africa is a highly regulated market. And so it's not easy, number one, to start a business. Mark Frankel, who runs Black Umbrellas, will tell you that it's a whole process to start new entrepreneurs with new businesses because there are so many regulations that they need to adhere to. You know, it's not, I'm not saying it as a, you know, as a criticism to South Africa. We do need these things in place, but when you are starting a new emerging economy, it does stand in your way of being able to create businesses. But, you know, so these are things that I think one needs to think of, that, you know, often you find that sometimes corporates are willing to invest more, but they can't because of other impediments, you know, in terms of the regulatory environment.
Good. Yeah, so I fully agree with you, Sis Phuthi. A good point. We need to relook into that when it comes to small businesses. That's probably something that Chantel, we would be presenting as an outcome to this dialogue. Christian, there's a question there. How do we account for 5% skills levy from the mining houses versus the actual impact and implementation? With your experience, how would you respond to that?
Okay, thank you, Mmabatho, and I thank Paul for a wonderful question. It's quite a beautiful question that is put up. You've got two ways in terms of accounting in the 5%. The mining houses are regulated twofold. Firstly is the mining charter. Annually, we report how we have spent the 5%. From your training report as well as your BE scorecard. I think this is where we have to report how we spend the 5% and in what programs that we have spent the 5% from. And to support that, you also need to look at what you have spent. Is it impactful and is it properly implemented? And how do we measure that? We measure that by in terms of saying, out of the people we put into schools or development programs, how many of those do we absorb into our business? That's how we measure that. And second to that is that the spend in skills is not only for jobs, because you must remember, we cannot employ everyone. We can employ so much people. Now, with the cake that we've got, we now have to bake another cake so we can create opportunities for for other people as well. This is in the form of supporting your SMMEs in order for them to start procuring from the mine as a secondary income stream for those kind of businesses that we're talking about. So this is how we now formally account for the spend and the impact that it has from a mining perspective. Okay.
Good. If I may, Mike, you could just let Andrew from the audience. He has a comment on the comment that he posted on the chat.
Sure, Mthembu. I'll post that onto the chat for you.
No, I think he wants to respond through voice.
Andrew, if you can just unmute yourself and you can chat. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Thank you so much. My name's Andrew. I'm from an organization called Umuzi, and we've been supporting talented, unemployed young people to access high-value digital jobs in South Africa. I think when we talk about this market disconnect, I think we need to be a little bit more honest about ourselves. You know, I think we know the problems. Hello. We know the problems, and we can talk about the problems till we're blue in the face, but what are we actually doing about them? I think on the corporate side, there's a lot of signaling going on, but not a lot of actual movement. And on the supply side, young people will be, young people continue to complain about the issues of not having access to quality education and quality skills development that then leads to jobs. I haven't seen anything from the telcos in South Africa allowing young people to have access to, for example, free data to upskill on certain programs. I know that, for example, NASPERS has some good investments in EdTech. Couldn't they work with the MTNs and Vodacoms to allow for certain programs to be allowed to be zero rated effectively, so that in this time when unemployment isn't going to change, there is no secret source that we're going to change during COVID and the recession that we're in to change unemployment in this time. It's not going to happen. So let's be more honest about that, and let's try to find solutions that actually will support young people being more ready, more skilled to access jobs when they come back online. I'll leave it there, but very happy to engage with anyone around these comments. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for that comment, and you've hit the nail on the head. What is important is whatever signal comes from corporate in terms of what they do, then it must translate into meaningful actions that everyone can actually see. And I think the solutions will always be there. It's a matter of, I think, the will to actually provide and ensure that those solutions are executed in a more impactful manner and so forth. Does any one of our panelists want to respond to Andrew?
Mmabatho, hi. So I just wanted to, I felt like before Andrew spoke, that something that's also very important is creating access. Just in the spirit of the township economy that was spoken about, and when Naka said that they may have initiatives, but the people that it's supposed to accommodate and to assist, the information doesn't reach the township. They don't get the information. They aren't aware of it, and that already presents itself as a barrier, and already presents itself as, and then it may translate to whereas they didn't get the information and they didn't get access to it. So it's so important that access is made available to not just the people, as was mentioned earlier, to not the people who know what a laptop is, who know how to use it, who have an internet connection. But let's start right at the bottom with providing laptops, providing data, providing internet connections, and just having that ability and giving them the opportunity to take opportunities. If I don't know about an opportunity, I can't take it. So providing access for people in the township, for that township economy, speaking of people like the example that Ms. Phuthi made about Stokvels, that was made by older generation and so on. So informing those people of the capital that they hold and the power that this group of 10 women they have. if you're presented with opportunity, with information, then you also have opportunity there.
Agreed. I will just ask, thanks Dineo, I'll just ask Chantel to respond on a comment from mine, and then Eleanor, Mike, if you could just put Eleanor, she has raised her hand and would like to make a comment or ask a question. Chantel, I think in my view as well, building on what Dineo was saying, is that corporate also needs to ensure that they are willing to engage with CSI organizations that are not highly concentrated in the urban areas in terms of support, but CSI organizations that may not necessarily be serving a community that is already developed from the kind of support that they are pursuing in that particular community. But is it important that they consciously also are aware that there may be other CSI organizations which may not be in the same position in terms of size and privilege, but who may be actually serving a particular aspect of our society that is in more need than what would be ordinarily served? What is your comment on that? What is your experience as somebody who has been working for CRET in terms of support that is provided across all sectors of our society?
Mmabatho, I think it gets down to opportunity and what Dineo was saying again with regards to access. Now, we've been very involved in working with youth on a number of levels, doing things like career guidance within schools. And, I found programs such as the CELC Take a Girl Child to Work program, which doesn't run very well today, but it had such impact when it was at its best. And we would see that by bringing in for a day or for a morning, bringing in the youth into our environment and providing them with the opportunity to speak, providing them with opportunities to experience. And I think very often we overlook the fact that it can be the smallest interaction that can make the biggest difference. And if more partners were bringing in the youth, providing them with those experiences. I had a student not so long ago who said to me, who had come into our office and said that they were so motivated by coming into the office because they didn't know what an office looked like and what a boardroom was like. And that was the great motivation for them to continue to work hard because they wanted to sit in a boardroom one day. And that is a really small thing. And I think that that's the way we can be working together to develop an inclusive and empowered society.
I agree with you. Exposure, which is obviously not limited to a particular class of society, but which focuses on those that are in true need of that. Eleanor, Mike, if you could just give Eleanor an opportunity. I'm going to wrap up in 5 minutes, and then we're going to get the last round of comments from our panelists.
Okay, I think the one area that this COVID has taught us is the importance of supply chain management. We've been faced with this shortage of PPE and the impact of this pandemic. If we had huge supplies of PPE, would be much, much less than what it is. And we've had to bring in PPE from China. There's no reason why this can't be produced in South Africa. And I think we need to learn from the Chinese, who are quite strategic about developing manufacturing industries. And we need to become self-sufficient in PPE, because this issue of pandemics, it's not going to end here. It's going to come up again from time to time. And we don't know how long this one is going to last. And, I've been approached by young people or youngish people who want to start manufacturing PPE, want to find out how to go about it. And yeah, it's just been difficult. I haven't been able to advise them. And I think this is one area of strategic industries, strategic areas of manufacturing that we need to invest in, and we need to give young people opportunities from working from unskilled, move to semi-skilled, move to skilled, so that education is through being in that industry, not necessarily through being in an educational institution. And of course, underpinning that is the ability of young people to read. Because if they can read well, then they will learn independently and they can move up. If they get into a job like that, they can move up the different skill levels. So really, I just feel we need to be more ambitious and strategic about manufacturing and the opportunities it offers. We need to look at the Chinese, or we need to look at UAE, where they've decided to invest massively in books and set up a Sharjah publishing to actually have an identity of being self-sufficient and providing for the rest of the region. And in that way, we will solve a strategic problem we have, as well as providing more opportunities for our youth.
I couldn't agree with you more, Eleanor, and you've raised quite a critical point. And I think we need to be, purposeful in terms of how we approach building the productive capacity, but also focusing on the sector that may not be as big in terms of size, that may require the support, but may potentially have those ideas that if there is a vested interest from all the parties in transforming them into, manufacturing capacities that could actually assist the country from an employment and from a growth perspective, and also to tap into what we have ordinarily neglected when it comes to the informal sector. So I fully agree with you. And I must just mention that Frederick Mabitsela has made an offer that she is willing to broadcast. He's willing to broadcast any opportunities to their audience, and anyone working with or creating these opportunities, and has shared his email with us. Thank you very much, Frederick. We appreciate that. Mike, who else do we have who has raised the hand? Richard? Hi, Mike. Might be on mute. Hi, Mike.
Yes, so can please chat. Thank you.
If you could connect, Cyril.
No, you said Richard.
Richard?
Hello, yes, thank you very much. I have two quick questions. One is in terms of youth participation. I'm keen to know, to what extent do you allow youth to influence the youth development agenda and programs within the country? To what extent are they part of designing that agenda? And the second question is, to what extent do the youth, do the youth development programs initiative take into account existing indigenous knowledge, thinking about arts and craft and the market that exists within rural areas and township? Thank you.
Anyone from my panelists who wishes to take the question?
Mmabatho, I would like to respond to that very briefly, though.
Yes,
Richard,
please.
I think it's a very, very relevant point that you raise. And it's one of the reasons why I am incredibly lucky to have such an active alumni, a group of young people who've come through our program and who are guiding us as to how we can be developing or working more closely with the youth. I find we have an incredible knowledge base from this group of young people, and the way they are giving back. I think it's very, very important to note that, but to acknowledge that the youth have to be leading in being able to provide opportunities going forward.
Any thoughts from my panelists?
Thank you, Mmabatho. 3 points. The first one, you did mention that often you find that the corporate supports urban CSI organizations and neglecting the ones in the township and rural areas. And I had said earlier on that most often, from my experience at least, corporates rely on being approached by CSI organizations. And you now had mentioned the question of access, to say those in the urban area, they may not know of a specific opportunity that is available. So it bounces back to the question of access. How are we going to do things different, rather than wait to be approached? What is it that we can do so that we uncover? Andrew is mentioning that there is a huge opportunity of young people that we need to be tapping into, but we are not, because we don't know about them. That is the first thing. And it ties with that one of, I think it's Richard about indigenous knowledge in the township. I will say slightly to say we look at the outcome most often, but this is an economy, it is thriving, but we fail to first understand the inputs that went into that economy. So it is a question of all the partners, corporate, public, individuals, to start to understand a specific knowledge, a specific skill, a specific network that is available at the township that we need to know first before we talk about intervention programs. That is my take on that one. And my last one, Elena has mentioned a lot that we are sourcing offshore skills and other products that we need not to be doing so because in the country we do not have skill. I think as well, before COVID, we were talking about fourth industrial revolution, globalization, the global village. So we need to know what is it that makes those countries competent and start to learn from them so that we can tap into their skill, into their knowledge, and bring it back into the country so that we be competitive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nako. If Mongezi, I would allow, Mike, if you could allow Mongezi to raise his questions. And this will be the last question. We will take the last round from our panelists and then allow Dr. Motsepe to deliver the closing remarks.
Sure, Mongezi, you can go right ahead. Thank you.
Good day, colleagues. Thank you very much for the opportunity and thank you very much for this insightful discussion. However, I would like us to define what is the national youth agenda. Because at the moment, the national youth development agenda, it's not mainstreamed, it's not streamlined. Everybody's working in silos. And therefore, we can't actually, measure the impact that we want to see. So from this discussion, I would then propose to CRF to develop a concept document for youth development that will then incorporate all the partners that are here in this platform with their pledges in terms of what will be their contribution towards a national youth development. We cannot separate youth development from policy. We need a white paper nationally. We need a youth ministry that will advocate for the marginalized youth across all government departments and the private sector. Each and every private sector company and government department must have a youth directorate that looks into the issues of youth. Particularly as it relates to youth development. I thank you.
Mmabatho, are you still with us? Mmabatho?
Yes, I'm still here with you. Yes.
Yes, if you may respond to the last question, my apologies, but if I think you would be best suited to respond to that in terms of whether CRF would be in a position to do that.
Yes, thank you so much, Mmabatho, and thank you, Mongezi, for your inputs. I think as CRF, one of the elements that we put forth is that we partner with government, but we are certainly not government. So the work that we do, we take leap from what government would take, and obviously there would be areas of soft advocacy around those elements. We know that the presidency has recently launched, I think late last year, a new 5-pronged approach to youth development. and they're looking at youth skills development, which is the normal one that we're looking at youth unemployment, looking at youth in service, because there's also an element of young people volunteering to provide service to others and in return gaining work experience. And I just can't remember the other two at the top of my head. So I'd say to Mongezi that yes, what we can do is to look at what has already been approved and launched, because we know that our government is also having youth development top of agenda. And we see how we can match or support in crafting some of the ideas to be implementable. At the level of policy, I think we know that, you know, based on that youth development framework that has been launched last year, certainly government, and I'm not speaking on behalf of government at all, is working towards programs that are very targeted towards youth development. Ours is to have a look at those and say, yes, we understand non-cognitive skills development is important because research has been done to pick up on that. How do we as an organization, as non-profit organizations, philanthropic organizations, as well as our corporate partners, how do we join in terms of achieving some of the national goals that are out there, instead of creating new goals that we need to achieve? So that's quite a valuable input that Mongezi is giving to us, to say that some of the initiatives need to follow national policy so that we have a national agenda. And I think one of the national agendas that we have is to look at young people in totality, not to look at young people just at the level of youth. That is why you would see that the agenda would focus from a rights perspective up until to making sure that people are participants, active participants in the economy. But yes, as an organization, we do value working with partners, but most importantly is how are we contributing into the broader agenda in the country.
Thank you very much, Mmabatho, for your response. We truly appreciate. I'm going to give each of our panelists 1.5 minutes just to wrap up. And then I can see Dr. Motsepe is already live on my screen. So we will then move to her to give us the closing remarks that we have been waiting for. Cyril, let me start with you. Your closing remarks on this conversation.
Thank you, Mmabatho. On my side, I just want to add, you know, the point that was made about supply and demand and the issues experienced there. You know, with the amount of skills that we having to import, you know, corporates, governments need to have more initiatives, perhaps to build the capacity locally, either through academies or the likes. So it's something that could potentially be explored. My one last point I want to make is, again, each one of us has a role to play. You know, us, the youth, the government, corporates, youth development agencies have a role to play. At times, we look at the person in front of us and think that that's the only person that we're solutioning. But that person behind them is a family, is dependents, is a community that they can go back to and impact positively and pay it forward. And the next person can do the same. So it creates that cycle of giving back. And before you know it, there's a whole culture within our society where we give back in terms of youth development. Yeah, so that's my last input.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Cyril, Dineo, your parting shots?
Thank you firstly for having me once again. And just in conclusion, I'd like us to think about the conversation we had here, and moving forward, think about practical implementation ways that we can think of in our personal and individual capacity as individuals, and perhaps in our working industries as well, and in our personal capacity and professional capacity rather, to think about what we can do, not just as human beings from our ends, but how we can involve our companies where we work to assist in the development of the youth, and in personal capacity, maybe acting as a mentor, providing books to younger people to read. If you have extra books in your house, or reading with your children, those who are parents, just to sort of encourage that spirit of reading. And I think those are the little things that perhaps aren't seen as on a greater scale, but because they're done on that level, they can influence so much more. And it's sort of like a domino effect, where only great can come from the little actions that we all do together.
Good. Thank you very much for that profound input. Chantel, your last thoughts?
I would like to thank everybody for their participation here today and for sharing. I believe that we as a country and a community are facing an economic challenge that is unprecedented. And if we are to work towards an inclusive and empowered society, we need to work together, to collaborate in order to alleviate the challenges that we have. And I think that is my parting shot, really. It's about the collaboration that we need to be putting into this across all levels. Yes, thank you.
Effective collaborations that are built on mutual trust and impact-driven solutions. Fully agree with you. Sis Phuthi.
Just two things, Mmabatho. One is I just wanted to just respond to, I think it was Andrew, who asked about the zero rating. And I just wanted to just confirm that I know for a fact that Vodacom has got zero rated services, certainly giving access to education on a zero rated platform, but obviously for Vodacom customers. And then there's also the Vodacom and Discovery partnership that was also done for COVID, just putting that out there. But just in closing, I just wanted to just give a quote from our former chairman, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. And what he says is that for as long as the shafts of our youth remain unemployed, our people will not be free. Decades into freedom, the face of poverty remains black, and it wears the face of an African woman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sis Phuthi. That was a powerful closing, and we shall indeed keep it in our hearts and in our minds. Naka, your parting shots.
Thank you. My take from this discussion is that there is a need to redefine what do we mean in South Africa by the concept youth, more especially to include the young ones from the early childhood development, and that touches the policy space, as mentioned by Mungesi. Because at the current moment, we have got National Youth Development Act of 2008, and it is defining who is youth, but we are now gathering that actually that is insufficient. We need to start from the very beginning, as Phuthi has mentioned, that the first 1,000 days are important. Basically, that is where we need to start. And I get Mmabatho saying CRF most often follow the position of the government. And in this case, I would like to say, perhaps it may be time out of these discussions to as well be the rearview mirror of government to say, basically, this is what you can do to really enhance youth development. There are suggestions from people across the country. And in conclusion, maybe let me be like Phuthi and conclude by quoting. I will quote Frantz Fanon. Every generation of youth has got to discover its mission, the trait of fulfilling. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall endeavor to fulfill our mission. Let me close with Christian. Your parting shots, please.
Thank you. What I would like to impress on today is actually three things. The first one being, we need to start investing locally and investing wisely. That's number one. Secondly, again, as a country and as a society, COVID has exposed us that we are not prepared in terms of echoing the sentiments by Messi Sulin saying we are importing PPE, and 90% or 60% of the things that we import or what we consume, we import rather than producing them locally. That will create opportunities for the youth. Lastly, I want to say that as a country, we've got good policies. We just need to align those with what we call practical strategies to ensure that they are implementable and we are accountable in what we do as a corporate citizen from each and every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all the panelists for all the profound contributions that they've made in this discussion. We truly thank you for all your ideas, for all your inputs. And certainly I have no doubt that they have helped to shape our thinking going forward and as we grapple with COVID-19 during this time. Ordinarily, what I would be saying before I welcome the next speaker for closing remarks is that may we all rise. But I'm just afraid that if I rise, I might just be exposed, that maybe my blazer doesn't match with my trouser. So I'm sure, Motsipe, there must be regulation somewhere that we can avoid this type of protocol in these type of setups. Over to you, Motsipe.
Thank you, Mmabatho. You know, all this protocols, they are so unnecessary, honestly. Rising for what? No, politics is a conveyor belt. You get on and you get off. Yeah. And one has to make sure that your feet are on the ground throughout this process and not just suddenly think that one is some whatever. If I was some Nobel Peace Prize winner, well, you know, or if I was, if I won some, you know, prestigious award, I would expect at least, you know, apart from the money or the badge I might get. Yeah, anyway, thank you very much. I'd like to thank our trustees and our private sector partners who are involved in the webinars, the donor partners, our alumni, Cyril and Dineo, and all the others who might not be, you know, whom I will not mention because, you know, these two represent all the alumni. And I'd like you to know that alumni are not just involved in being mentors, and they have also taken it upon themselves to fund other students so that the students can also benefit from what they benefited when they were part of the Cyril Ramaphosa Education Trust. Thank you, Cyril and Dineo. I'd like to thank all the participants who are in the webinar. You know, today we are in a way responding to the government's imperatives of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, because these are really some of the major issues that we are facing our country. How does a young person reach their full potential? It starts with conception. This young person, the person who is pregnant and conceives a child, gives birth to a child, is usually a young woman. Was this a planned pregnancy? What are the future prospects of this person who falls pregnant anywhere from the ages of 14 to 35? Well, as far as the age group of 14 to 35, we have a large incidence of young people. Well, the young mother who falls pregnant will definitely either take some time out of her schooling or drop out of school. Some are lucky in that they continue, go back and study and actually achieve. But we have a very large, we have a problem of youth who drop out from school, and usually from around grade 9. This can be either from peer pressure, or it can be from young people who are forced to go and support their own families, child-headed families, and where they are, you know, they are responding to the family conditions, sometimes with absent parents and children being raised by grandparents, and of course our migrant labor system that does not promote cohesion within families. You find a mother or a father coming home once or twice a month and the children are at home money being sent to the children. You know, those are some of the challenges that our youth are faced with. Apart from that, we also have a problem of youth drug abuse that is becoming a serious, serious problem countrywide. Gangs, those are some of the things that we as a society and our government have to address. Well, it's not only, we are also here to think of solutions. What are the solutions that we can adopt, or as the private sector, as members of society, what can we be aware of, or what can we do? Or what can our government do? Adopt a School, which is part of the Cyril Ramaphosa Education Trust, has a very good program. Apart from making sure that our youth are in schools that have the proper infrastructure, it also promotes the teachers who are teaching at these schools being holistically developed. We see it in the provinces where Adopt a School is involved, and the Orange Free State achieving the high academic marks that they do achieve. This is a program that can be duplicated, but of course, we have already spoken about early childhood development. It doesn't start with the matric results. It starts with having a good early childhood development sector that we would have. We also have to, I've spoken about Adopt a School. Another good program is the TARI program. Excuse me. We are aware that many children come from school at around 1 o'clock while the parents are at school. What happens? This is a time when children, walk around aimlessly. Some of them do not go home. But the TARI program at least provides an environment where the children are helped with their homework. They are provided with an environment where they can do their homework. And there are also the psychosocial, activities that take place to make sure that the children are well supported. There are also diversion programs, because some of the children who come, it's not like in every school where after school the children go and play sports. That keeps them busy. It's a diversion program which is not only practiced after school, it's also practiced weekends when the children might be up to mischief or have nothing else to do, or even go to, children, it also depends like group of the children. Those in the suburbs and in the urban areas have all types of activities after school. But TARI program is also a program that can be duplicated all over the country to make sure that our children are at least in an environment where they are safe, secure, and stimulated. When children, the youth that has either reached matric or is ready to go into tertiary, education, we should be like other countries. I've also heard some of the panelists talking about it. We should copy what other countries are doing, and more not to go for the office-based professions where they might not be employed. Sometimes I get so worried when I go to graduations, and one can almost be very sure where you find 5,000 students graduating, how many of them are going to get jobs? We should encourage them to go to further education and training colleges. Unfortunately, some of our further education and training colleges need to be supported and need to perform, where our children will be taught, the youth will be taught to be artisans. The government cannot be the biggest employer. By being an artisan, they can they develop scarce skills. The artisans are the ones which we need for the products that our country produces, because we have so much, we export most of our raw materials and import them again as finished products. At least the government has responded to that by having universities like the Sol Plaatje University, where students will be taught to develop our raw materials into products that we can buy. We buy motor vehicles from overseas, whereas the minerals are here. We can develop our own if we train our young people to be artisan, and this will address the scarce skill. I always tell young people, you know, some professions look glamorous, and then people want to go and do those. Why not become a plumber? Why insist on doing a profession where you might not even get, you know, plumbers are in high demand. Oh, what is it, Mmabatho? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. We need to encourage our young people to be artisans, to learn scarce skills. We have such a big need for the young people to be to develop scarce skills. Now we have the fourth industrial revolution, where the digital economy is taking over. Young people is not just something that has happened because of COVID. It's been there before, where we've had unemployment and of course a poor economy. So if we were to develop our own economy, I'm very happy that the private sector has realized the importance of shared value, because these companies, the big conglomerates, the multinationals, they have realized, or they should realize, that there should be shared value. By developing the youth, they are developing their future customers who will buy their products and make them richer. By developing the youth, by supporting development, youth development, they are developing their future employees or executives. And it's in their interest that the private sector does not develop alone. The rich don't get rich on their own, while the poor get poorer. Then it all contributes to an unstable society. We do need to have the buy-in of the very, very wealthy to make sure that as you step up the ladder and reach the 50th floor of downtown Johannesburg or whatever, you leave the ladder so that others can climb the ladder and come up to the top of the ladder with you and enjoy the benefits of the direct sunshine. One other area that I've also heard being mentioned is career guidance. It's very important that our children from while they are young, either through mentorships, by having adults or people who are more young, like other youth, being mentors. If I tell a young person something, they look at me, roll their eyes, and you hear, oh, BBT, born before technology. You know, that's why it's not like when another young person like you, the young who are, you know, some of the young people who are here, when you give them the advice, you know, they believe it immediately. You are cool. You are chilled like them. The message sings better when another young person tells them, perhaps you should go and do this and be their mentors. And that's where career guidance, it should not just be left for the school. It should be somebody, you know, some of the alumni have committed themselves to being mentors to other young people. That has a very, 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 you know, beneficial effect of having mentors. Now, the companies in our townships or even small and medium enterprises are faced with the challenge of monopolies and, you know, big conglomerates. At least now we've seen more and more where government has taken the initiative of making sure that they are not challenged. The big malls that are developing in the townships, They are a challenge to the family-owned corner store, some of them which are started by young people, and some of them where our young entrepreneurs are frustrated and cannot, you know, proceed with their businesses. But then we do have Black Umbrellas and other organizations, of course, which are involved in programs where they support previously disadvantaged businesses, Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and they have an induction program where they support them. And the Black Umbrellas can boast that I always hear them say that they produce millionaires. These millionaires are the ones who are going to employ other young people and be themselves the future. This will cut, this is what we have to do, cut the cycle of poverty in our communities. Well, COVID-19 has really brought a lot of challenges, but we should also adopt an attitude that we should make an opportunity out of a disaster or a challenge. We are now communicating via webinars. We see Parliament, people no longer traveling to Cape Town and up and down between Cape Town and Pretoria and having their meetings. We don't know whether that will be the future of Parliament or whatever, you know, but some of the lessons that we have learned now during the COVID period should be adopted for the future. So much money can be saved. The money that is wasted on duplication of drivers, PAs, and what, you know, houses can be used to build houses and improve the living conditions of our communities. We are such a very fortunate country. We have no excuse to have the informal settlements 26 years into our democracy. In the past years, we were separated. I come from one of the Bantustans and all these little bits and pieces across this country. But we should be in a situation where people have proper housing and there's proper, you know, planning of how the housing. We should not have a situation where you spend half of your salary or a large fraction of your salary traveling to work, because most of us are in the rural, far from the places where we work. This is where our government should also prioritize having work at areas close to where people live. We are really, post-COVID will be like what happened during the World War, after the World War in the 1940s. From where people were doing things physically into the machine age, now we are entering the digital economy, which is also going to cause people to lose work. We are already facing a jobs pandemic now, not only just from the state-owned enterprises, it's also from the private companies because of COVID, where people could not operate their businesses, could not go to work, were retrenched, have had to accept cuts in their salaries. So these are some of the things that we should plan for. What is going to be the new normal post-COVID? When is COVID? We pray for a vaccine. That is the only thing that might save us. Eleanor mentioned us buying PPEs from abroad. What prevents us from making masks, from making sanitizers, from providing all the equipment that will provide us with PPEs? We have the manpower. Our factories were closed in the past when we started buying from other countries, India and China. We are busy providing employment to people from other countries and denying, preventing our own citizens from having employment. As it said, all right, I can see we are really nearing our closing time. Another thing that we should do is encourage apart from encouraging writing, we should document our history. Our history can be documented either through biographies or by supporting writers who will write about events that future generations have to know about. South Africa is a country that has very little written about itself, and where the people of South Africa have written about their own history. It's an area where a lot of works really we have to, and this will also provide our literary people who are gifted in the literary sense to provide to the economy and to themselves. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for participating in this webinar. I'm sure we are all going to leave with more ideas, and we'll have an opportunity also among ourselves to interact and make sure that it's not just a talk shop, to make what we have said a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Motsipe. We truly appreciate that. Was very powerful and very rich in terms of us having a very deep understanding of the challenges that we face, but equally what solutions that we should be looking at in actually turning the tide into greatness. We really thank you for your time that you have sacrificed to be with us today, and we truly appreciate from the depths of our hearts. I hope, as you have rightfully indicated, that this creates a platform for us to continue the conversation between youth development practitioners as well as corporate South Africa representatives that are here today. We have at least had an insight into what both parties are thinking from a COVID perspective, impact perspective, and where we should be driving our energies and our focus to ensure that we continue being impactful in developing our youth to greatness. So hopefully this creates an ongoing conversation that will never end, but where whenever we meet again, we will be talking about effective partnerships that would have been implemented to continue driving society forward. And again, I must say, ladies and gentlemen, from my end, I wish to thank the media present today. I wish to thank our panelists, as well as our guest speaker, Dr. Motsipe. And also from my end, I appreciated the opportunity to lead this discussion as a facilitator. In my view, our defining moment will be the agility and the pragmatism with which we are able to execute youth support programs, take full advantage of the opportunities to avoid a potential catastrophe. It is in our hands, and I truly believe with the deepest of conviction that we can do it. Thank you very much.